Vanessa Fabbre, and we're at the Be All Conference, the Midwest's largest transgender conference here in Chicago. And I'm with Dr. Ken Dollarhide. He's on the faculty in philosophy and religion at Keene University in New Jersey. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Dollarhide.
My pleasure.
So could you share with us what brought you to the conference today?
Yes, I was born on Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, South Dakota. I'm an enrolled member of the Oglala Lakota Nation and grew up on the reservation and in border towns for the first 18 years of my life. The first awareness I ever had of anyone we might call today transgendered was as a child. I was with my grandmother. It was July, and we were at a ceremony at Pine Ridge, a ceremony, and a young person behind me, and I can remember very clearly to this day, this was in the 1950s, and the child was wearing a brown dress, and her hair was in tight curls. I think it was called like a poodle perm. And I said to my grandmother, "Why is that boy in a dress?" My grandmother said to me, "Hush, that's not a boy. She's very sacred and you must treat her with respect." And I wondered what that meant. Who was this person? And so I asked my uncles and aunts, and they, "Oh, well, this is a homosexual, this is no one, you don't want to know about him." And I kept saying, "No, that's not possible. Grandmother told me this is a sacred person." And I grew up, kind of forgot about it, and after I was got out of the Army and was back at university, a friend of mine called me one night and said, "Let's go drink a beer." And I said, "Sure." And so he came up in his car and was with his girlfriend. There was a young woman sitting in the back seat, and I got in the car, and he turned around and said, "That's Charlie, and he's queer." No, it turns out, of course, her name was Charlene, and she was trans, and we lived near each other, so we began conversing. Talking to her. She was eventually thrown out of the university for being trans, but we became very close friends. She moved, this was in Lincoln, Nebraska, she moved to Denver and committed suicide because she couldn't deal, with who she was. And I eventually, in New York, I met Lee G. Brewster. And Lee G. Brewster ran Lee's Mardi Gras, and Lee and I became very close friends. And Lee would have parties at that time and started a magazine called Drag Magazine, the Queen's Liberation Army in New York City. This was in the late 60s. And so Lee and I became friends and stayed friends until Lee died. I got married in New York, and my wife and I moved into a building we did not know on 128 West 73rd Street in New York, Manhattan, and it was an all-trans building. It turned out that everyone in the building worked at the 82 Club, which is a drag club, and we all became good friends. And I was tested several times. "You're going to the clubs with us." Okay. And so I began meeting trans people as humans, not as objects, but as people. And that sparked my interest again, and I remembered the conversation with my grandmother. And so I began trying to learn, trying to study, asking questions, trying to come to some understanding. And in the process of doing that, I began looking at other cultures, particularly Native American, but also Asian cultures.
And so that kind of brings us to your presentation this year. Could you tell us a little more about your presentation?
Yes, I'm going to be examining gender traditions among Native American nations and tribes. There are over 150 tribes with the third and fourth genders. And it's a very interesting thing that in most of these tribes, though not all of them, gendered people are considered sacred, holy, blessed. There's no question about how, why, what, who, because it's not considered deviant behavior. It's quite natural behavior. It's simply who one is. And so my approach to trying to understand what it is to be trans is that it's a spiritual condition. It's a position that comes from deep within the soul and bubbles out. that it's not a psychological problem, it's not a medical phenomena, it's a spiritual awakening. And I'm interested in the struggle of how one comes to be who they are. Among the Lakota, for instance, you define yourself. I don't tell you who you are, you tell me who you are. It's a profoundly different way of being oriented in the world. And how is that possible? What does it mean? Also, gender is understood not in terms of genitals, which strikes me as stupid, something I've never met anyone that said, by the way, my name's Ken, I pulled my pants down. And no one's ever said genitals. We should define each other by function, and that can be very fluid. So there are 150 different tribes where there are the third and fourth genders, and these people have beautiful names. For instance, among the Navajo people, nadle. Nadle means something like in the process of becoming. What a beautiful, fluid notion. In Lakota, the word is winkte. Win means female. Te is future tense, will be woman. Beautiful concept, because again, it's fluid and one is defined by role in society, not a peripheral role in society. They weren't pushed to the outside but brought in. Also, interestingly enough, they were seen to be great parents, and so they were given children to raise and adopt. The antithesis of what I think happens in Western society, where we have what I call this scientific mythology of a binary, and that's unfortunate.
So that brings, I'm already learning a lot talking to you now. What do you want people to take away from your presentation this year?
Several things. I hope that it can assist people in becoming who they are internally. That they don't need to be defined externally, but internally. I hope they can understand that binary is not necessary. It's not an either or, it's a both and. And that this can evolve in many, many directions. And I hope also that they understand that many things I will be talking about are things that no longer exist on many reservations. That sacred vision quests, sacred ceremonies have been replaced, unfortunately, with alcohol, with drugs, with abuse. And the problems that exist in the main society exist on Indian reservations as well, and of course we have the Western world for that, particularly Western religions, for destroying these cultures. The late Lame Deer, who is a Lakota holy man, said two interesting things. We don't define other people, they tell us who they are and we accept it. The second thing he said was, if Wakantanka, the Holy One, gives someone a burden, Wakantanka also gives them a way to carry that burden, which I think is incredibly beautiful. And this allowed, in the old days, all kinds of not only gender divergent people, but all kinds of people to be accepted within the community. As Western culture, particularly Western religion, began moving west, it's interesting to note how many times these are attacked. Well, these sodomites are attacked. To give you an example, in Florida, when the Spanish came in and the Jesuits, wonderful folks, when the Jesuits discovered that there were people we would call transgender among the native people of Florida, they were used as live dog food. They were literally thrown in for dogs to rip apart, to use as live dog food. When the churches moved in to Dakota, even to this day, winkte people are not allowed to be buried in the Roman Catholic cemetery at Pine Ridge because they're an abomination in the eyes of God.
So clearly there are, these forces that have changed the cultures that at once looked up to.
Unfortunately, that's
Yeah.
absolutely true.
Yeah.
And instead of people getting their visions from dreams, and dreams are extremely important among all Native people. In fact, a Lakota winkte named Naskpe once said that she believed the white world was the Washishu, white world, was all mixed up. That whites thought was reality was an Indian nightmare, and that the real world is the dream world. And this world is dying, unfortunately, because of the influence of Western culture, because of high unemployment, because of death rates. For instance, Native American men life expectancy is 52 years. I'm sorry, Native American women's life expectancy is 52 years. It's 47 years for Native American men. The highest death rates are diabetes and tuberculosis, which most of the world does not even think about anymore. And with this death of the cultures being replaced by the most heinous things, drugs, alcohol. There's now spousal abuse. When I was growing up on the reservation, that rarely happened. Even one tribe, I won't name the tribe, have now recently passed laws outlawing same-sex marriage. And so the culture is dying. And what I want to do is try to help people realize that there was something that was incredible, that was unique, that was beautiful, and that is worth knowing about. Because maybe, just maybe, if we can have some understanding of how other people live, we can find out something about ourselves. And wouldn't it be incredible if all of us could sit at the same table?
And it sounds like, from what you're saying, this is such a critical time in history for that message.
Oh, I think it's crucial to understand that. But I do warn people, don't go to the reservation. And I tell people this in my seminar. Please don't go to the reservation and think you'll be welcomed. It's very dangerous. You could be hurt. Existed. Also, don't try to go native. You have no idea the number of people I meet who say, oh, well, of course I have some Indian blood in me. Don't try, the largest tribe in America are the wannabes. Don't try to do that. It's a form of cultural imperialism. But appreciate this, understand and learn from it as best you can, but don't try to embrace what is not yours.
What is your best advice for people who will hear your presentation, probably learn some new things about historical culture in Native American communities? What is your advice for people who are at the conference this year who learned something new from your presentation?
I don't think I would give them any advice. I think that would be terribly pretentious of me. I just hope to give them some information.
Maybe your hope for how that message could then be relayed to other people.
Sure, I have lots of hope. What I would hope that happens is someone who's struggling with herself or himself can embrace their own soul, and they can simply become the person they've already been. And I think if that can happen, that's very beautiful. And that's what I would hope would happen.
Thank you.